In the time I've been in Myanmar, it's been surprising to me how many times and in how many different ways I've heard people say they want a retreat center. Especially in poor areas where there are so many needs, why would people prioritize such a thing? Let's come back to this question later. As we saw in the last video, one of the main features of scarcity is how vulnerable it is to shocks. It leaves little space to absorb new costs. In order to absorb these shocks, you need to have a little extra space. And in scarcity, there is nothing extra. Economists even have a special concept for this kind of extra. They call it slack. If you have slack in your budget, you have room to deal with surprises. For someone in scarcity, slack looks like a waste. Why have something you don't use? But in fact, the secret to avoiding the scarcity trap is found in slack. Life is so uncertain and so surprising that it is wisdom to always have some slack in the system. Slack is the shock bar. For without slack, every shock becomes an emergency, and this emergency triggers the scarcity trap we looked at earlier. We've also seen how mental scarcity is created by a resource scarcity, and how tightly linked those two things are. Which takes me back to the retreat center example. I've come now to understand that when people ask for a retreat center, they are asking essentially for mental slack, for the extra space to make thoughtful decisions and escape the scarcity traps of their lives. This is in fact one of the most important ways to combat scarcity. Find ways to create slack in the situation. Of course, the obvious idea is to create slack with money, which is what savings groups are trying to do. And that's all well and good. But mental slack can be just as important. In the next and final video, we'll look at other ways to manage scarcity. But for now, pause to reflect on this question. How do your choices suffer when you are mentally exhausted? Can you think of a recent example from your own life?